That attaches to the foot.
Yeah, your angle like this, like what? You can put it down.
This smells like the bath.
And one of the things I found after doing tours for much of my life is we always find the shade. So move in a little bit and then you can hear me a little bit better as well. I call this the heart of Beaver Dam just because of what happened here. All the things over the years. This is kind of one of the places where people would come for lots of different things over the years, but also because of what happened here, the different businesses, the different activities, and this is where I always like to start, right in this area. If we look around this corner right here, there were lots of different buildings. I call them hard-working buildings because some of them go all the way back to the 1800s. And there were things on the first floor, but also on the second floor, and so we're going to highlight some of those things at the same time. Beaver Dam was founded in 1841, and not very far from actually where we are right now. So how many people are from Beaver Dam in this group? Okay, and so how many people from outside of Beaver Dam? All right, that's fine. Well, if I would just draw an arrow right from here, probably about 5 blocks that way, it's called Mackey Street. And Food Pride is a grocery store, and it's right in the back of that area is where the very first home was built by Thomas Mackey. He walked from Fox Lake. So Fox Lake was actually founded before Beaver Dam. It wasn't a real big settlement, but there was nobody here. Now we talk about that, I'm talking about white settlers. Native Americans had passed through this area for thousands of years, and mostly because of springs, and that's why we have Spring Street right here, named for that, because there were clean water springs, artesian wells even, that were in the area, but also wild game. Beaver Dam Lake was very much like Horicon, like the Horicon Marsh. It wasn't a natural lake, this is a man-made lake. So people came here, Native American settlers, for the game, for food, because there certainly were animals living in the area too. But a source of water was really important to early settlers. And the first thing they wanted to do was 2 things. They wanted to create a dam. So that the dam that we have today is down the street, and it was built for, first of all, for power, because they needed it for 2 things, a sawmill and also grinding grains. So 2 purposes. But So they had to build a dam for power, create power then to propel the equipment in the sawmill and also in the mill where they ground flour, basically. So that was pretty important. So water was huge. It's always been important for Beaver Dam. That's why we have Spring Street, and there's all kinds of springs even today. In fact, most of the businesses that are on this street have problems with water in their basement. If the water table's up, then they have water. Of course, now we're kind of in a drought. We're not so worried about that, but water was important. All right, so the first settlers were there. The downtown area, that was in the 1800s also, and we're going to see where some of the very first businesses were located at one time. But we're going to come back to this corner. So, as I mentioned before, important corners. This building right here was very important because it was the very first medical complex. You think about that, well, you know, here we are right in the downtown area. Well, this was an area where you might have had a dentist upstairs, you may have had a doctor, and so this was kind of a medical facility for the early people of Beaver Dam. And so you think, well, they have steps. And so we often wonder, how did people manage with, you know, they had a handicap or disability, but all the dentist's office, doctor's offices, they were all upstairs on the second floor. Many different buildings in Beaver Dam, and this is another one of these important ones, but it was called a block. So it was called a business block. And we think about a block, we think about a city block, but this was referred to as a business block because of retail on the first floor and all kinds of things on the second floor. Nobody ever lived downtown. That just wasn't done back at that time. And you know, now we have apartments all over the downtown area, but back at the time, it was just for businesses. There was a livery stable if we went around the corner. There was a livery stable in this building at one time in the back part of it. So this building goes way back in the early 1800s. And it was many different, there was a shoe store at one time. So it was a lot of different things over the years. Across the street, there was a huge wooden building. I came to Beaver Dam in 1980, and it was still there. It was called the Empire Block. This huge wooden building, just filled with retail on the first floor and offices on the second floor. And that building was there for over 100 years until finally it just started to kind of fall apart and then it was torn down. So again, this corner being really important. And there was also a dentist's office on that corner for 100 years. So again, the reason why people would come to the area. The building across the street we refer to as the KC Hall, Knights of Columbus, and they still use the second floor. And that building was built in the late 1800s. But across the street was also the post office. Now you think, well, why would it be in a building? Well, they actually had to fight to get that. So people would want the post office to be in their building because think about it. Everybody would come every day to pick up their mail, then they might buy something at the same time. So when the post office became available, because sometimes businesses would change and they say, well, we don't want to do the post office because it was extra work for them as well. They got a small stipend for doing it. So the post office was on that corner at one time as well. Also, some other businesses that were there, Woolworths were there at one time. There was a restaurant on the corner and a tavern. So again, were those hardworking buildings. We're going to take it back in time a little bit and talk about what it was like to live in this area in the very beginning of the settlers. So this was a wooded area, bramble. So when they started building their homes, the people who lived here, they had to cut down all the trees and build their homes. There was no hardware stores to go to, so they had to actually build everything that they needed. And what happened then is they ended up cutting down all the trees. So as far as you could see, there was no trees and everything was clear cut. Here's the problem. Even though it may have been the summertime, they needed wood. So why would they use wood in the summertime? For cooking, right. They had wood stoves and they had to cook, so they needed wood. So this was the commodities corner. So men would cut down trees and cut this wood, and they'd have wagons full of wood that you would come in and buy. So that was the commodities corner. So come into town, or if you lived in a town, you'd have to come in and get wood because you had none in your yard. If you had a tree, you didn't think, well, we're going to keep this beautiful tree in front of our house because it's so beautiful in the shade. No, they thought, you know, we need to have food, we need to heat our house in the wintertime, we're going to cut that tree down. Who cares what it looks like? So it was kind of just for practical purposes. All right, The last thing I'm going to talk about here is why people came to this spot. The library was built in the 1890s, and so that was really a big gathering spot. People had weddings on the front yard of the library, and so it was also guest speakers would be there. Somebody running for public office was use those front steps, and so people would gather here. Any special event that happened after World War I, after World War II, people came to this corner because they knew this was the gathering spot for anything big that was happening, and they would actually build bonfires in the middle of the street. The streets were paving stones at that time, and they were double fired, so they were really hard. So it was able to do that. Could you imagine somebody doing that today, saying, "Hey, we're going to meet right here. We're going to build a big bonfire," and people would bring anything from home that they had and bring it and build a huge bonfire. The beginning of the county fair, people would come off the train and they would end up being in this area, and but they have big celebrations. So that's why this is an important corner. All right, we're going to continue.